So as you start building and scaling your organization, again, I'm coaching you to be a millionaire real estate agent, not a thousandaire real estate agent. So here's some questions that I want you to start thinking about, and I'll try to read them slow. So if one of these really resonates with you, jot it down. First one is, what happens when I get a call that comes into the office? So what's the process? Is there an admin that answers the phone? Is it me that answers the phone? And then and then the second question is, what do we say? So is it, hi, this is Derek. Is this welcome to the Thai group? It's so what you need to have a script. So when we had a full-time administrative assistant here at the office, they would say, thank you for calling the Thai group. This is Claudia. How can I help you? So there was a specific script that they would use every time. So someone knew that they were actually calling a real estate office. Next one, how do we set up appointments on my calendar? Okay, so this might sound dumb, but like, do you have a calendar? Do you have documentation? Like every single listing appointment I've ever been on is in my Gmail calendar with the name of the client, a phone number in case I'm on the way there and an accident's there and I can't find the phone number. And I also put in the address of the property in the actual address line. So I highly recommend doing that and keeping documentation. And if you have an assistant that's helping set up appointments for you and they have access to your calendar, make sure they're putting in at least those 3 pieces of key data. So name of the client, the reason is listing of, so it's Tom Smith, listing appointment, and then the address. Okay, and then the phone number. So there's 4 pieces of data. Okay. The next one is what scripts am I going to use once I get to an appointment? So if you're meeting with a new buyer or a new seller, what script is going to be your default script? And if you don't have them, we've offered some on our website here that the Inner Circle members get. I would also talk to the Jeff Baker, who was on the call on, was it Monday or Tuesday? And he's got his own set of scripts he uses, and he's also willing to coach people individually one-on-one. So if you need some script help and script practice, that might be something to do. Okay, so then the next process you have to ask yourself is, once the client signs a listing agreement or a buyer agreement, what's the next step there? So do you have a process in place? Have you actually thought about, what's going to happen? Because you want to prepare yourself for success. I know there's people on this line that have sold hundreds of homes. There's also people that have sold just a couple. But make sure, even if you've sold hundreds of homes, what should the process ideally look like? Because what happens if something happens to you today and you're not able to perform the duties that God's given you to perform, and someone else has to pick up where you left off? Do they have a checkbox or a checklist? Next question, what websites do we use to advertise on? Who inputs all the data into each of these systems, like the MLS and et cetera? Like I have a transaction coordinator that's part of the job for the $250 that we hire her to do per deal, is she enters everything into the MLS. Do we have a photographer on standby and ready to take the photos? What happens when we get an offer or multiple offers? What happens when we have an accepted contract? What's the process that happens? Who handles the inspection request? Who handles the negotiation of the inspection results? What happens if there's an issue with the appraisal? What is the process for the closing? Who sets up the closing? Who goes to the closing? You should know and have a plan for all these things. This is part of the systems, okay? So at the end of the day, and I want to leave a few more minutes for you guys, the thing that you probably heard is that my life, and I didn't even go into my personal life, which annoys a lot of people. I'm like, oh my gosh, he has all these things even in his personal life. I have spreadsheets for everything and checklists for everything. But just glean off of that you can build a life that you are happy to be. Hopefully I don't look miserable to you. I am enjoying my life. I love what I do. I love helping and serving people. And I love learning things and then passing those on to other people. And so the checklist idea, there's a book called the Checklist Manifesto, and it basically talks about how even like an airline pilot, and the airline pilots, they might have flown 10,000 times. They still check, lights on, fans on, exhausts on, engine warm up, wheels up. They literally have a checklist that they go through. Why do we think we're so much better than an airline pilot that we shouldn't have a checklist for when we get a new listing, when we get a new contract, blah, 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 blah. Have a process. And I actually put some of our own team documentation in the inner circle group. So if you don't have one, just start with mine and take notes off of it and say, oh, I didn't even think about this step. I didn't. And then hopefully you can do better than me. Like just use this as a launch board. So I've sold 2 buyer's agent both times. I need to get my processes written down so I'm consistent. Don't miss any steps. That's right. We need to make sure we get the systems down. And honestly, if a client sees that we have a system and a process in place, they're a lot more confident that this system works, right? All right, next one here is at the once you have the systems in place, once you have people in place to help you with your systems, you need to make sure that you are checking up on them, because if you have all these checklists and they don't actually get followed up on or checked, then unfortunately that's not going to work. So I have a friend of mine, his name's Ricky Kane. He wrote a quote that's in my book, and I'm just going to read it. He says, when building out systems and processes, build them to be scalable and where you intend the company to be 20 years from now. And really that goes back to vision, doesn't it? Like if we're having this big vision about the Thai Group is going to be the premier real estate company that's going to get the #1 amount of referrals in Cincinnati, that's the big vision. Then we come up with this year we're going to sell to 100 families, buying and selling transactions. So you have the big vision and you have the big goal, and then you have to have the process to get you there in the checklist. So start reverse engineering where you want to be.